Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Taylor here at Casone's RV in Mesa, Arizona. I'm here to talk to you about the dreaded question, the RV crash, and if it's going to happen, if it's already happened. A lot of people have, of course, been talking about a bubble of the actual just market crashing in general, and the housing market being a huge topic of discussion about whether that is going to crash or not. So to give you the quick answer is yes, the RV market is going to crash. And before you guys are jumping concern about that, I'd like to tell you that the RV market has always been crashing. It always will crash, and it always has crashed, except for one time. And that's during the time of the COVID crisis, basically where RV prices have gone up because RVs are depreciating assets and have never been meant to go up in value, and are never supposed to go up in value for really any reason, and never have. They've always been depreciating. Book values on RVs have always gone down, whereas a house values go up, house values come down. Just depends on the market, where you're located, all that stuff. But RVs have always gone down. They will go down, except for one period of time during that COVID crisis. Now, will it ever go up again? I don't know, maybe. But the problem being that, or the so-called crash, which will appear as a crash, just like the shortage of RVs and everything else was a crisis, is because the RVs were selling for more than they were valued at. And what has kind of happened is that a lot of banks, just like in 2008 for houses, over allowed for RVs. Some banks were allowing for 110 to 120% of loan, basically financing for loans on an RV. And if you are in the housing market, you have somebody called an assessor who basically comes out and assesses the value of your home for a bank, and will say, hey, the home really shouldn't be worth this much, and you should only be able to give out a loan for this much for the home. Well, for RVs there is no such thing, and RVs can oftentimes cost as much as a home, even more than a home, depending upon the RV. But to let you know why this is a problem is because, unlike houses, whereas if you basically give out a little bit more than a home is worth, you can live in the home, you are still using the home. A lot of people who are buying an RV usually aren't buying them to live in them. Some people right now are, and that's what I'm going to get into here in a second. Basically, RVs are just depreciating assets, and when you over allow for loans at 110% or 120% of what the RV is worth, normally in an RV's lifetime, if you buy a new RV, the first 3 years of its life, 40% of the value of the RV will depreciate. So within 3 years of owning an RV, the value of an RV will depreciate. And what has happened during the COVID times is that 2010 RVs are selling for nearly the retail value of what they were brand new. So now people would get loans for RVs that, whether they're used or new, usually this actually is more of an issue with like the used RVs, where they'd get a loan for something that's used, and they'd get a loan for close to the value or double the value of what it is worth. And on top of them now having a loan for something that wasn't worth that much to begin with, the RV itself goes down to its original market and then continues to depreciate. So we're running into a lot of people when it comes to trade-ins right now, where they owe $20, $30, $40, $50, $100,000 more than their RV is worth, which is only a problem that's already happened and is going to grow in time. Now, here is the catch with all that, because where there's bad, there's really always good when it comes to markets. A lot of times you may have a lot of people that default on their loans, RVs go to auction, a lot more become available, the values come down, and then more RVs become available. So who is that good for? Just like in the housing market, when things, if interest rates or whatever raise and the housing market goes down, more homes become available. That's good for the consumer, it's bad for the seller. So it's becoming worse for the seller, and not necessarily every seller. If you owned an RV 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and you're trying to sell it now, then it's going to be as if it hasn't really affected you in any way, or shouldn't. If anything, the values will still be up a little bit from even than normal, than you would normally sell for, because the market's still up on RVs. It's just going down. But the bad news is for the people that purchased RVs during that time and owe way more than the RV is ever going to be worth. So what happens? Well, you have a few options. You can pay that RV off until, of course, the loan term is out, and then you can sell the RV and basically lose all that money, which definitely is going to happen to a lot of people that have purchased in a bad time. Or you can roll that equity into another RV that maybe at this, when prices come down and RVs are, actually become more not more valuable, but more RVs come available, and you can actually purchase an RV at a really good price and then roll some of that equity from the RV that you paid too much for into the RV that you got a good deal on. Now, believe it or not, RVs are still selling. It's just that more RVs are becoming for sale, and the prices are absolutely dropping. But another thing that's happening, which I've never seen before, which is happening currently, is that a lot of people, due to the housing market, are selling their homes and then going to live in an RV. Now, I would say in general that's a bad idea. Most of the time that would be a bad idea, unless you're actually buying a used RV at a really good value, and you know what you're purchasing and you're getting a good deal on it. And the main part of this being that you are not purchasing a really expensive RV. Don't sell your home and buy a new $100,000 RV to live in it for 6 months. If you're gonna sell your home and buy an RV to live in temporarily, then buy a used RV to live in temporarily that is not super expensive, has taken a huge depreciation hit already, so that when you go to sell it, it's not that big of a deal. So you definitely can do that. A lot of people are doing that, and basically because rents, at least from where I'm at in Arizona, can be $2,500 a month just for an apartment or for renting a house or whatever it is. That would make sense to actually buy an RV, and you would be saving money in that instance. So you really just have to do the math on that and then go and look at an RV that's appropriate for that circumstance, because more RVs will become available as the market turns over. And at the same time, again, this is still a double-edged sword. So where more RVs become available, there may have been people that, just like in the housing market, are waiting because they're just like, well, I'm not going to buy it. Same thing with me. I'm waiting for a vehicle. I wasn't going to buy it over MSRP, waiting for the vehicle to become available. I did order a vehicle, so I waited. Just like people in the market, they're waiting for RVs to become more readily available, more options as there are. So I'm not saying steer away from purchasing an RV. I would probably say sell yours now if you can. If you do own one and you did buy it in, regardless of what market you actually bought it in, it's still a decent time to sell it, but just more are becoming available. And the double-edged sword being that there may have been a lot of people that have been waiting for the market to kind of adjust for more options to become available, not just for money, but for options of what they're looking for, and may now make a purchase, which is also happening. So just as things are actually not selling as much, or harder to sell. It's harder to sell not because people aren't buying them as much, but they're harder to sell because there's becoming more available, there's becoming more options, the prices are going down, and there's more competition there. Alright, you guys, hopefully this answered a few of your questions about the RV market crash, if it's going to happen, if it has happened, when it's going to happen. And if you have any questions, leave a comment down in the description below. I will be happy to answer your comments or questions. Be sure to leave this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.